Welcome to Module 3, Chapter 5, Cost Estimating and Bidding. This is a rather long chapter, covers quite a bit of material. I think some of it is a little bit more useful than other parts of it. Generally, contractors, generally owners and architects, they do their part in estimating and so that they know what to look for and how much something should roughly cost. And then contractors will also do the same thing so that they know exactly how much they're going to have to spend and they can price in how much they're going to make in profit as well. So both sides, whether you're working for the owner directly, being like the architect or the engineer, their team, or each individual contractor, will all take part in this estimating and bidding process. As the book notes, it is one of the things that is indispensable for every construction contracting business. There is no doubt that you cannot even begin to get work unless you estimate the cost of what it's going to take. And even if you're not even bidding, if somebody comes to you directly and says, look, give me a price for doing something, if it's reasonable, you got the job. Let's say like a home improvement contractor. That's the type of thing that can happen. Somebody's not even really shopping it. They might hear about you, or they may know you a certain way, and you're going to go ahead and give a price. Well, you can't begin to do anything without estimating. Think if you were at your own home or at a relative's home or somebody, and you're going to help them build a deck. How do you build a deck? You got wood, you got posts, you're going to use 4x4s or 6x6s. You got to sink your post in concrete or not. What kind of deck boards are you going to use? You're going to use treated lumber, or you're going to use synthetic material? You're going to have a railing on it. You're going to have steps on it. What kind of railing? Is it going to be a wooden railing? Or is it going to be, some sort of prefabricated railing, or is it going to be some kind of metal railing? All these things have to go into play as to what you want. And then you're going to have to count the cost. Wait a minute, I can't afford that. I can't use synthetic treads. I need to, deck boards. I need to go back to treated lumber. So all these different things come into play, and they're going to be an estimate of what it is you need to do and how much you're going to have to spend. So every construction project is like that, obviously to a greater detail than others. Generally, construction cost estimates are prepared for a ton of different reasons. The book talks about some different types of estimates on pages 105, 5.3, different types of estimates starting there. One of them is an approximate estimate. One of the things with that is it's like don't even want to be involved in this. So let's just say you're an owner and you're looking at a project, and the architect is talking to you and says, like, we can do apartment building. This is what we can put on your property. We can do a bunch of townhouses, or we can also do an apartment building. And then you start, well, how many units can I get in an apartment building? And somebody, the architect, looks at stuff and comes back and it's like maybe 100 units. Well, then you can approximate what the cost is right off the bat. If you're in the apartment business, or if you're in the home building business, you're going to know that in this day and age and in this area of Washington, D.C., that the finished cost on an apartment building is roughly $200,000 a unit. So if you had 100 units at $200,000 a unit, well, right there, you're going to spend about $20 million in preparing this apartment building. And right there, you might say that's an approximate estimate, but that's just too much. I can't afford that. Or you might think, okay, that's fine. We can do that. So that's the type of nature with approximate estimate. Right off the top of your head, you come up with a number, you have a number in your mind, and you go ahead and you approximate the cost of something. Another area of doing it, and the book talks about it, is these I talked about like a parameter cost at the very bottom of the book, a unit, how much does a whole unit cost? But there's other different types, particularly for subs would use them. You know, a sub is you're gonna do a swimming pool or something, or you're gonna do asphalt. You do real quick calculations to, you know, length, width, depth, and come up with volume, cubic feet of volume, you know, takeoffs like that real quick and dirty, so that you got an idea of what you're looking at. Then the other types are detailed estimates, where you lay everything out almost like a per unit type price, or everything is laid out just like verbatim. This is everything we need, and this is what the cost, and as well as your profit gets put into all of these if you're a contractor. Lump sum is where you don't break down the price. You just give a single price. It's like, this is it. You know, if you're told you need to come in and, you know, you're an electrical contractor and you need to wire per code, and here's a set of plans, you know, this shopping mall, something like that. And you come back in and you give a price, one price, that's it, lump sum. There's a particular place that is appropriate. Unit price estimates, they sometimes come in, they can be completely part of the bid process, the estimate, or it can actually be part of it, so that, you know, here's my price, here's my estimate for everything that's going to be done, here's a detailed estimate, or here's a lump sum. But if there are more quantities necessary than what is actually being described in my estimate, if there's more of something else needed, then here's my per unit price. The book does a good job on page 109, figure 5.2, of showing some per unit costs that would maybe come into play with regards to an excavator or somebody doing some large site work. And you'll notice that it's broken down into cubic yards and linear feet. You would stick another price there if you ran over them. So the estimating part is crucial. I would say that most jobs start off with the rough estimate, the approximate estimate, to see where you're at, know where you're supposed to end up at. Then you come back in and you do a very detailed estimate to exactly what it is you need to have done. So what is it that needs to go into an estimate? What is it you need to have? We talked about the types of estimate, but how can somebody even estimate a job? What do they need? What tools do they need? Well, the first thing they need, usually, book talks about reporting services, but I'll let you read through that. You need to have drawings and specifications. You have to know what it is that's out there. You need not just a drawing, but the spec book. Architects will prepare a specification book for a building that they're putting up. Not so much a house, but there is enough wording on a set of house plans to let you know that, what it is you're supposed to be looking for and what you're going to have to bid on. But the spec book is huge. It tells you, it helps you with all the takeoffs. It tells you all the materials that are going to be used in the building and the number of them. If you're doing a hotel, you know, how many units are there? Well, there's 75 rooms. Well, we need 75 doors. We need 75 door handles. We need 75 individual room numbers on those doors. We're going to need 75 dressers and 75 toilets, and then it tells you what type of all those things. What type of door are you supposed to have? What type of hinge are you supposed to use? What type of windows are you supposed to have? Everything is laid out in great detail in that spec book. So without that, you can't even begin to do an estimate. So you need to have those tools provided to you. And that's what the architect and the owner are also need those things. The architect needs to finish his product so that the owner can also do his own estimate of how much this thing should cost. So again, everybody's going back and forth. Not just the contractors are doing the estimating. So the book talks about something called set-asides. These are things that aren't eligible to be bid on, or sometimes maybe a contractor can't do that. The book goes into them. Sometimes under some government projects, there's certain things that can only be done by certain people. And so those things are called set-aside. They're not to be bid on. Sometimes those set-asides require, certain professional qualifications. The qualification-based bid is very important in my world of land surveying. Land surveyors, engineers, we want the government to put out bids for qualified professionals, not somebody who says they can do survey work, who says they can do engineering work, and they don't have a license. One, it's a misdemeanor for both if you practice such a thing, but there are people who try to do certain things without licenses, and the government is being pinged on and constantly having to be lobbied for qualification-based bidding. So once that's done, you've got the plans, you have things in place. Now you got to put everything out to bid. Usually your bid set of plans is maybe 95% complete, something not quite 100% all the time, because the process, think about the process, the process takes one whole year for an architect and engineering to be completed and permitted and ready to go. Well, as soon as that owner has his plans and he's over here and everything's finished, he's ready to go, he doesn't want to wait for the bid. I've waited a whole year, maybe there was some extra time involved, and it's been 15 months, but it's only supposed to be a year, but now I can get my permit. The owner, he or she does not want to go through 2 or 3 months of bid process. So what they do is they get a set of plans, it's 95% complete, and those are the ones that go out to bid. At that point, you have something that you work on, you start getting feedback, you go through the bid process, and then if there's any substantial changes with the final set, you allow the people who you shortlisted, maybe you haven't awarded it yet, but maybe you shortlisted, you might allow them to notify them of some subtle changes and things that might change the price and allow them to tweak their bid for that particular part of it. The contractors, one of the things you have before you bid anything, you have these pre-bid meetings. Now a lot of those pre-bid meetings are done virtually. You don't have we used to have like a government or somebody would have a meeting and you would actually go to their place of business, sit down, and they would give you the information that you need to place a bid. Those days are few now. Even owners and architects, they put their bids out now virtually. They post them, whatever they need to do to put something out in the service that shows, hey, we're building this and we need to get some prices. They may be open to, builder or architect, and might have 10 general contractors that they would rely on, and they might focus just on those 10. And so it's kind of like a closed bid where only you 10 people get to bid on this. So there's a lot of different ways they do it, but the pre-bid meeting basically would have all of the plans, all the spec book, everything you need, along with instructions on what type of format the bid should be in, a bunch of criteria about maybe overhead and profit, things like that for the bidding process. as well as when does the bid have to be in? And how long is the question period? Because questions will always arise out of a bid process. The contractors will always have questions, and they'll need answers from the architect or the owner to answer those questions to be able to put the bid out satisfactorily. So oftentimes a site gets visited. I mean, as a contractor, you can bid a job, but you're going to want to have access to the site. And the book talks about the types of things that are going to be on site. So not only do we be able to go visit the site for a bid, but what other things are there? You know, it talks about location. You know, do you have a paved road to get to the site, or do you have to drive through the woods and four-wheel path and things like that to get to a site? Do you have electricity? Do you have water, sewer hookups? You know, various things that affect how well you could do your job. I mean, if you're building something and you don't have electricity and you got to supply a generator for your work, it's a big deal. A lot of times the sites do not have electricity right away. And so you will have to have generators on site for the subcontractors. So even, you know, even things along those lines are very important to figure out. While you might know what the building's supposed to be and you have all these specifications you're supposed to follow, I mean, what if the site's in the middle of the city and there's no parking for your trucks? You know, you got to figure out, you know, how do you get your materials in and out? So it's a lot of things that go into play that are outside of the actual set of plans or spec book. We talked a little about the schedule. You know, there's a time frame. The estimates need to be in. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna pause at this point in time. You can take a break. It's a good spot. I'll just pause it and I'll come back. But it's time to take a few-minute break and give yourself a stretch, relax a little bit, and then we'll come back and talk about, from the contractor side, a little bit more about how they go ahead and estimate. So let's take a break. All right, I'm back. So at this point, we're going to look at how the estimate is prepared by the contractor. So I want to kind of focus on just a few parts. If you were to look at your book, page 117, 513 is preparing the estimate. Look at that figure 5.3. These are the components of a contractor's detailed estimate. So even if you're going to give a lump sum, you're going to try to figure out how much it is that I really need to put in that lump sum. You're almost always going to do a detailed estimate to come up with your actual cost that you offer up in the bid. So when you're doing construction work, you have to look at these different components: materials, labor, equipment, indirect costs, subcontractor quotes, and a contractor's markup. So some of these are going to get lumped together. I'll gloss over a few of them because they're somewhat common sense. I mean, you need materials. So what is it you're going to build with? What materials are you going to use in construction? And those particular items are self-explanatory as far as whatever it is you're building. You might just be the concrete guy. All you need is steel, rebar, and concrete, and gravel, but you probably need gravel too. You know, if you're the plumber, you know, whatever pipes you might need, whatever glue and cement you might need, whatever fixtures you may need. Do you have to get the bathtubs and the showers in a hotel or something? Whatever it is you're doing, those are the materials that get used to build with them. You figure out how much they cost, how much it costs to get them delivered to you. You take storage costs, if you got to pay to store them someplace, and that ends up being the cost of your material. Labor, Labor is a couple different things. I'm gonna look at labor and I'm gonna also look at indirect costs here in a bit. So labor is considered a direct cost. How much time is it gonna take for my guys and my gals to build this project? And how much am I gonna have to pay them? You know people's hourly rates, you know how much you pay people, and so that's your direct cost. However, there's indirect costs. The indirect costs are those costs associated with the labor as well as administrative costs. So what costs are associated with labor? Well, all your payroll taxes. So while you take out the employee's money of federal and state withholding taxes out of the paycheck, and you take Social Security, the employer also matches the Social Security. So you have an employee, you're paying part of their Social Security as well as they are also paying part of their Social Security. You have insurance, you have workers' comp, you have unemployment insurance, but you also have other insurance that are now indirect costs, more indirect. We'll get to that in a second. You have, if you have benefits, if you have vacation, sick time, those are costs tied to your labor that you have to pay for. Some more indirect costs though would be, like I said, insurance. So I have two businesses. I have a law office and I have a surveying company. I have errors and omissions or liability insurance for both companies. Both companies have general business insurance. It's like a loss of data, like an umbrella type policy. If a piece of got equipment that's insured, like from the survey standpoint, I have insurance that protects all my equipment, not just the computers, but I mean, I have something in the neighborhood of at least $50,000 worth of equipment that if it is run over by a truck or if somebody steals it or if I'm in an accident, that equipment is all insured. Replacement costs are insured. I have to pay for that. Again, I think of on and on, like automobile insurance. Sometimes you have to have extra insurance for a particular job. All of those are indirect costs that need to be accounted for. And usually they're built into the hourly rate for your labor. So a lot of companies in the engineering and surveying world, that's what I'm most familiar with. They work on a multiplier. So they look at everything they have and they multiply their employees' hourly rate by a number, and that comes up with the rate that they're going to charge the client. Sometimes, a lot of times that includes a reasonable profit as well. But that markup is usually around 3.5 times the employee's salary. If you're paying an employee, $30 an hour, you're probably going to be charging $90 to $100, $110 an hour for that employee to cover all of these other items that I just described, as well as some profit. When you go to a car dealer, auto repair shop at the dealer, and they're charging you $100 an hour, that mechanic is not making $100 an hour. He's probably making 30 or 40. So that's what you deal with as far as how you take labor, indirect costs, and contractors markup. You sort of lump them all together in one, and it gets put in under labor. Sometimes your equipment also gets put in under labor. I can't charge for my equipment, but I told you I have some expensive equipment. So I can't charge for using it. So what I have to do to get that money back is I have to build it into my hourly rate that I would have for an employee. So if you're doing a particular job, I might charge $120, $130 an hour, for doing a certain task. And, really, if I had an employee, I'd be paying them, like I said, $30 an hour or so, and I'm charging 3 or 4 times that to cover the cost of the equipment. Uh, if you bought a new, on the surveying side, if you bought a new truck and new equipment, you'd spend $100,000 to outfit the field crew. You got to get that money back. In the construction world, if you're, you may have to rent equipment, you may have to buy equipment. You got to know what it is you have to get. So if you're, a simple one would be like the excavator. So if you're an excavator and you need to go on site, you need to clear this thing, what do you need to have? Do you need to just have bulldozers? Do you need to have, is it a large site where you might need to have a pan? Or do you just need to have excavators, which are obviously bigger than bulldozers? Do you need to have a parking lot on something? Do you need to have a roller? There's a lot of things that you have to start looking at, and okay, if I need an excavator, how big is it? Do I have one already? Can I get one from another job? Will I have to rent one? You look at all those different costs. If it's something like, let's just say you're a carpenter, you go back and you think, okay, how big is the building? How many people do I have working? Do I need generators? Do I need to go out and buy another couple generators because mine are all used on other jobs? Do I need air compressors? Do I need any special tools? So you have to look at the equipment you're going to need for that particular job and see if anything is special, anything has to be added, like rental, and you have to build that into the price also. And then a big one here is the subcontract quotes. So whenever you have a contract and you're not going to perform all the work, you have to get your sub-consultants to do it, your subcontractors. And you're going to need prices from them, and you have to also incorporate those. So let's say you're the excavator, all right? You're in charge of building the site, you're in charge of digging the footer, or digging the footer for the foundation, and then what do you need to have? So you can do certain work, you can prepare the site, you can get the gravel in, but now it comes time for concrete. Well, you're going to hire a concrete crew. They're going to come in and frame everything and form the concrete and build these forms that you pour the concrete into. A separate company is going to do that usually, and you need a price from it. Pavement. So you're going to have a separate company come in and pave for you. You're going to proof it. You're going to proof the ground as an excavator. You're going to roll it. You're going to make sure it's compacted correctly. And then after that, a separate company comes in to pave. And then on top of that, a separate company would come in to stripe the parking lot. So these will all be subcontractors just for an excavator to prepare the site. And then on top of that, maybe you have to have a landscaper. Maybe something like that has to happen as well under your watch. So that's an overview of the components of the contract, what the general contractor has to deal with. Let me go ahead and I'm going to pause for a second, come right back. All right. One of the things I wanted to point to, and that's why I had to flip through the book here, is on page 136. It's figure 5.10. In this particular spot, we're looking at how equipment is being used. We're looking at a DP12 bottom dump truck, and how is it going to be used for hauling whatever it is they're going to haul. So you're looking at how many trips it takes, how much time you're spending on it, how much, just list a lot of stuff here on how your equipment is going to be used. So a lot of times, excavators and haulers can charge for their equipment. You can charge so much per hour for the use of a bulldozer, a backhoe, dump truck. You also can charge for the operator. So it doesn't matter that you're moving dirt. Of course, you're going to move dirt, but it's going to cost you, maybe $1,000 a day for the use of an excavator, along with another $300 a day for the operator. that type of thing gets put into a bid process as well. We talked about like the overhead. We talked about subcontractors and markup, how you put all that into place. Some contracts, talking about overhead and markup, some contracts, particularly government contracts, allow for a certain amount of overhead and a certain amount of markup. So you play with it. You maybe they only want to give you 10% overhead and a 15% profit, but you adjust your numbers accordingly so that maybe you cover 10% overhead is probably not enough. So you adjust those hourly rates again. And where this comes in sometimes too is on a union job where you have to pay union wages or scale so that they know that you're going to pay every carpenter between $20 and $40 and every electrician between 40 and 50 or something like that. So it's all laid out so they kind of know what the hourly rates are. But you have to sort of finagle them and play with the numbers if you're not going to get enough profit or you're not going to meet your overhead, and they allow percentages to come in on top of that. An example of like a big lump sum, figure 513 talks about how a lump sum for an airport terminal building, but yet it's a detailed breakdown to get you to that spot. And then you just give a big price at the end of it. This is what we have to pay. The book talks a little bit about bid changes. The bidding process is interesting because when you put things out to bid, particularly if it's public sector or private sector, there's a little bit of difference. But you have to be ethical bidding. You can't get a bid, from company A and say, I'm going to see if I can get them to knock it down a little bit by telling them that company B is just a little bit cheaper in this area or that area, but I really like to use them and see if I can't get their price down some. And then you go to company B and you do the same thing. That's unethical bidding. People do it, but not so much in the government side of it, because the government has a very detailed process of how you bid. The bids stay sealed, they all get opened up at the right time, and you don't have any of that going back and forth. The book does talk here a little bit about bid spread. The bid spread is like the total difference between like high and low. So that if somebody's too low, it probably is going to trigger something that maybe their bid is not correct, or there's something wrong with it. And the same thing, too high. Maybe they're doing something that they shouldn't be bidding on. But there's a range that you look for, and sometimes in the bid spread, it shows you a problem. Like all of a sudden, if you get half your contractors are, let's just say, 40% cheaper than the other half, there's a problem. You've done something, there's something wrong in the bid process that'll point out this issue that you might need to take a look at. You might need to go back to everybody and clarify something. So the bid spread will show you possible problems that you might have. Let's see. Various things here in the back end of the chapter. Sometimes a person can withdraw a bid if they realize they make a mistake. Let's say you have to have your bids in by January 30th. You put your bid in like on the 22nd, and you realize you have something wrong. You might be able to fix it. You might be allowed to pull that bid and fix it, but sometimes you can't. Just depends on the rules of the process, the rules of the owner, and what they're looking for. Another thing that is a particularly important part of the bid itself is a list of subcontractors. So I've been a part of bids with architects, where an architect would go in with a team of consultants. they'll list the sub-consultants. So in my case, they would list an engineering and surveying firm. Then they list the people who work for the engineering and surveying firm and their resumes, so that you know who they are and the type of work they've done and the projects they've worked on, so that the owner can compare sub-consultants to one another and see which team has a stronger team in their mind. The same thing goes with general contractor. They're going to list their sub-consultant, their subcontractors, and you'll be able to get an idea of something about each one of those companies, some sort of resume, some sort of portfolio about each company and the type of work they've done, and maybe references as well. So that the bid's not always about the money. Sometimes it's about the components of the people doing the work. Let's see, I've talked about bid ethics a little bit already. You know, you can't just go messing around. You shouldn't. In private sector, there's nothing stopping you from doing that, from trying to get people to change their bids and lower their prices some. But what happens is people stop wanting to work for you. You know, if you're gonna get my price, you know, 10 times in a row, and at the same time I lose the job all 10 times, and the same company gets the job all 10 times, and each time you come back to me asking me for a lower price so I can get it, I'm going to realize you're just playing me against someone else, and there's no benefit for me to even continue to put a bid in for anything you might ask me for in the future. And I've definitely done that with people, for sure. The book talks about 5.38 about bid rigging, price fixing, things like that. You can read that. That's also a very bad thing. Government kickbacks and stuff, people have been arrested for it. Private sector, people, you know, again, you just end up not working for them. They can't get jobs done. Let's see. I think I'm going to pretty much wrap up here and just sort of flipping through the big picture. The bidding now is done with computers. So much of it, sometimes there's software. If you look back here, computer-based estimating, and see page 165, 5.46. One of the biggest changes in technology over the last 5 to 10 years is called BIM. It's a building information modeling. What it does, you can read about it in the middle of 5.46, in the middle of page 168. But it's a three-dimensional model done in a CAD program, but then it's smart. It goes in and it takes all of the specs that the architect has prepared, so that you can pick on a door and you know the manufacturer of that door. You know, if it's a left-hand door or right-hand door, you'll know the warranty on the door. You'll have, if there's maintenance on the lock, maybe you have an electronic lock and there's maintenance that needs to be done. So all of that will be on the door. You can go to the HVAC and pick on an air handler, and it'll tell you the manufacturer, tell you the specs on it, how much power it's going to require, if there's anything special wiring that needs to be done, and then also, again, the warranty and the maintenance schedule. And all of this is the case. You can also do walkthroughs with the BIM. You can walk down a hallway and see everything going on, and you can look up and see the lights in the ceiling and pick on a light. It tells you all the information about the light. This is the type of product that is being handed to owners as a final product. You know, the turnkey, you get a set of keys to the new car, you get a set of keys to the house. Well, builders or owners get these BIM models from architects now. And that pretty much is the way anything sizable is going in the future, is all with BIM. Smarter the model, the more you pay for the architect, that's for sure. So that pretty much wraps up chapter 5. There's some review questions in the back that you might just read through, try to answer them. I'm not asking you to do any as an assignment, but just give them some thought and help you seal what, help you, I guess, confirm and what the bid process is and the different things that go on inside a bid. So take a break and we'll come back with chapter 6.